All right, why don't we go ahead and get started here? I know it looks like a few people are still joining, but everybody else is on time, and let's go ahead and respect that. So welcome to today's session. My name is Josh Brothheim. Let me go ahead and turn on my camera here. There we go. Ooh, wow. Uh, hey, everybody. So my name is Josh Brothheim. I'm the training manager at Sumo Logic. And I have a peer of mine today, James Ashburn. He's going to be assisting. Hey, James. Good
Hey
to see you
guys.
out there. Um, so for today's class, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. James is going to be monitoring them and ask away, certainly ideally related to the topic, but even if it's not, that's okay. Let's keep him busy, not, don't overdo it, of course. So yeah, let's get rolling here. I'm going to turn off my video to save a little bandwidth. And James, see you later. And all right, away we go here. So welcome to today's session. I've got a couple slides here. So my name is Josh Brothheim, like I said, and what we're going to be doing is going through the fundamentals class with you. Today is all about the basics of Sumo Logic. What is it? What's a query? What's a dashboard? And many other questions that you might have. And so that will be our kind of topic today. For a course agenda, here's what we're going to more accurately be doing. So the first 10 minutes, as discussed, is going to be about Sumo Logic, who we are, what we do. Then I'm going to do a demo for you, so I'll give you a real world experience of how Sumo can help in a specific use case. And then we're going to dive into some labs. So we're going to go and be hands-on today, and we're going to walk through the system. And as it says with the hands-on labs, we're going to look at what data is collected. What does collected data even mean? Do some searches and understand, or get a basic understanding at least, of the query language and how searches work in Sumo Logic. And then create some dashboards, set up an alert. So ideally, you're going to get a pretty full experience with Sumo and hands-on, like I mentioned. And then what we'll be doing is taking an exam at the end of today. So we're together for the next 3 hours. The first 2 hours are going to be demo and labs, and the last hour is set aside for a certification exam. I'll talk about the exam when we get closer to it. Don't get too stressed about it. It's free for you, free for your organization. And like I said, we'll just talk about the details when we get closer to it. In recognition of you taking that exam later and passing it, once you do so, you can send an email to us at training@sumologic.com, and I'll add this promotion later, for a $15 Uber Eats gift card. So while you can't enjoy a meal right now, when you get your Uber Eats card, you can, and you can think of us fondly. We're doing 3 of these classes. So we're doing today, tomorrow, and Thursday at the same time. So fundamental search mastery and administration. And you're welcome to join those 3 classes and earn 3 gift cards. So, please do so. And like I said, I'll remind you of that promotion later. The other promotion we're doing that you'll be pretty close to completing is a promotion for getting 6 certifications. And so by taking today and Wednesday and Thursday, you're half the way there. And so we'll give you that free backpack, and it's a good backpack. It's not a cheapo one. And that's why the goal is a little bit higher for this, where you have to get 6 of them. So I'll remind you about that promotion later as well. All right, let's go ahead and dive in here. Let me go ahead and start my little demo here. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over. I'm previewing it. There we go. Going to go over here. And what I'm going to show to you is Travel Logic. Now, we are Sumo Logic, but we have a sister company called Travel Logic, and we really don't, but for today, let's go ahead and assume we do. And let's assume this is a production environment and a production company, and they're doing business. And the business they're in, if the page that you're looking at doesn't kind of give it away a little bit, is a travel agency. So you want to book your hotel, you want to book your rental car, your airfare, you can come to our website, look at different rates, and we'll help you compare them. And I'm sure you've used websites like that before. And we get a percentage of each transaction. And business is good. People are booking their holidays. Things are returning to normal, or whatever normal is now. And we're seeing business start to come back, and people are booking, and they're getting hotels or whatever, and they're getting great travel experiences, and we're getting revenue. And like I said, business is good. Now let's imagine I work for Travel Logic, which I do for today, and I get a Slack message, not that one from my friend, but this one from my system. And what this Slack message says is Sumo Logic alert gateway response time outlier. It's giving me a time range. Now, hopefully I know what a gateway response time outlier is referring to, but even if I don't, the system is letting me know something at this time range related to gateway is weird, out of whack, not normal. And that's good to know. Now I need more information than that, but that's certainly an important piece of information that Slack has provided me here. Now, let's say at the same time, my manager calls me up and she says, hey, Josh, I hear people are having problems checking out of the Travelogic website. And if they can't check out, they can't book their hotels, they can't book their rental cars, they can't get holidays and vacations, and it's a bad customer experience and we don't get revenue. And so that's the problem. So I've been told secondhand that people can't check out. And I have some, I guess, secondhand information here that there's some issue with the gateway response time outlier. And now my job is to figure out what's gone wrong, and maybe equally important, how to resolve it. So what do I do? Well, where do I go? Scary. Well, fortunately for us, we happen to use Sumo Logic. So our Travelogic company has this dashboard. Actually, let me go ahead and update this real fast. Just to get a little. Oh, I know. Sorry, we switched to a new one, but it's the same gist. So let me just preload these just to have them handy. Here we go. So let's say I go into Sumo Logic like I just did. And what I have here is a dashboard that I've created, or somebody at Sumo Logic has created, or somebody at Travelogic has created, rather, excuse me. And so what this dashboard is showing me, hopefully I understand what's on here, but once again, if I don't, it's still helpful in that it's showing me different things, metrics going on related to operational overviews, such as reporting nodes and VPC network rejects and Redis issues, and et cetera, et cetera. It's also showing me checkout service right here. And what it's just showing me is for the last 60 minutes. Now, some of these are green, meaning good, and there's zeros. But this one is not a zero. This is not good. It's red. Green, good, red, bad. Very simple. And what we see here with the red is there's been a lot of errors. There's been about 3,000 errors over the last 60 minutes. Well, like I said, I'd hope to see all green in there, but the fact that it's red and there's been 3,000 errors over the last 60 minutes during a time where I got a Slack message that there's an issue and my manager told me there's an issue, it's leading me to believe there's an issue. I'm starting to see some evidence of at least checkout errors. Once again, don't know what's wrong, what's causing them, but just some evidence of errors occur. Now, obviously, I need to dig deeper. This isn't enough information. So what I'm going to do is click on this checkout service. I've just preloaded it. I don't know why it didn't really save me that much time. And what I see here are some more dashboard panels that I or somebody else at Travelogic has created. What these are showing are metrics related to Travelogic data. And let's start with the one on the top left here. Now, I am on the West Coast of the United States, so my time zone is Pacific time, and so it's 4 p.m. Pacific time. So when you see my time zones and stuff, that's what they're reflecting. As we get into the lab exercises, your time zones may be the same, they may be changed. So just, as we start to look at things together, time might be a little off by a few hours, but no big deal for the exercise here. And what I see here, what I want to show you is this first one here. This is showing me bookings. So this is showing me how many people or how many successful bookings there are, as well as how many failed bookings there are. So what I see here at about 3 o'clock or 3:15 today is a bunch of green, 111 successful bookings at that moment in time. That's good, 111 happy customers. I also see 3 failures. So there's some failures, some bookings didn't go through. And we can imagine, there's many reasons why not, bad credit card or, whatever, but I see a few failures. So failures occur, but they're not normally high. Or, I don't even know that they're not normally high. I see that failures can occur. And so at 3:15, a lot of successful bookings, not too many failures. 3:20, same thing. Successes are basically the same. Fails are virtually zero, but existent. But what I see here at about 3:20 or 3:22 is a spike in failed bookings in orange. I also see a drop in successful bookings. I could have a bunch of failed bookings and a bunch of successful bookings, which could just be normal, but this is showing me fails are occurring and successes are not. And then now this is a lab environment or a duplicating demo environment. We see the issue gets resolved at about 3:40 or so. And now we see, once again, those green and successful and drop in fails. So the system here is telling me something at about 3:20 or so, resulted in a lot of failures. Okay, still don't know why, what, but once again, more information. Errors over the last 7 days. This is showing me, hence the title, errors over the last 7 days. So it's showing me how many errors did I have today from about 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock? How many errors did I have 2 days ago from 3 to 4 o'clock? How many errors did I have 4 days ago from 3 to 4 o'clock? And so once again, what's letting me see here is normally at about 3 o'clock, I don't have many errors, or I might have a couple, we saw a few, but it's pretty low. And then what I see is right about 3:20, 3:24, 3:25 or so, I see a spike in errors for today represented in orange. But I don't see a spike from 2 days ago or 4 days ago. If I did, that might be normal. I just might naturally have a spike of errors at 3:30 every day for some weird reason. I'm sure you guys have systems out there that you can kind of relate to that. But this is letting me know normally I don't have errors, and today I do. Once again, just kind of letting me know there's a bit of an anomaly occurring. Keeping going here with these panels here. The bottom left here, errors by node. What we're seeing here are nodes, source names. We'll talk about that kind of information in a little bit, but if I mouse over them, what I very simply see are errors. And what I see for my source name is, oh, actually, that's not the one I want to show. I want to show this one, prod08.travel-checkout. So the system's letting me know that there's errors related to checkout, which is good. Just more information, more information, more good. Now here, this panel right here, this is related to the error that I got earlier. What this is showing me is gateway latency. Now, this is utilizing a feature we call outlier, which is a really helpful feature in Sumo Logic. What it allows the system to do is determine what's normal and what isn't. Rather than you putting a static value, the system is going to look at data, previous events, use math, and we can discuss the math. Actually, we'll discuss that tomorrow. And then spit out what it considers to be normal or not. So to look at this sort of quickly, we'll go, like I said, we'll do this deeper dive tomorrow for this, because this is a powerful feature. But what we're showing here is, for example, at 3:14, what I see is the processing milliseconds, the amount of latency. Now, there's going to be latency. Latency is a fact of life. I don't think theoretically even you can have no latency. I think you have to have some latency, but there's going to be a range of good latency and bad latency. Think of that as being at home. Your connection. A millisecond of delay is fine. A second of delay is 10 seconds is bad. So there's kind of a range there. So what the system is doing is saying, okay, based on previous data, I am establishing a range of 401.33 to 401.67. That's a pretty thin range. And now the actual processing milliseconds for that moment in time was 401.41, which is within that range. And so that's good. That's normal. It's average, or normal is probably a better word. Let me go fast forward a few minutes in time. The range actually is about the same. I think it may have changed by 0.68, 0.67, but it's about the same value still within the range. Now, what I see here at 324 or 325 is I see the threshold, the range is still normal. The system is expecting that number between basically 401. It's now showing 899, almost a full second of latency. And the pink triangle here is representing that that's not normal. Now, it's not necessarily bad or not. It is kind of bad, but it could be for outlier, could be for a good event, but it is letting me know that that's not quite right. And what I've done on the back end is created an alert so that the system, every time this gets abnormal, the system is going to notify me. And that's what it did. So it worked. So I know our latency has spiked recently. Once again, still not quite sure why, but that's something that's helpful. Because now I know it's not just bookings. I know it's latency. It's more than just the, I guess this might be a reach, but it's not just the software. It's not to say it's a hardware either, because we'll show on the reveal what it is, but it's more related to resource management, I guess would be a better way to refer to it. Now, one more panel here, CPU and total memory. Once again, without getting into the specifics of each line here, what I see are memory, CPU usage. And what I see here, once again, at about 315, 314, I see all the numbers are flat and low. And what I see at about 324 is, once again, I see they all spike. Now we'll look into those spikes, what's causing those spikes, and kind of related to this portion of resource management. I guess I'll give you a clue of what the issue is, but that's kind of where I'm digging into. Now, what I want to do though is I want to dig into the CPU and total memory usage, because I want to start to figure out why it spiked. It doesn't just spike on its own. Something has to happen or not happen. And so I'm going to dive into this view of metrics. So here I have the metrics related to CPU total and memory usage. Now, what I've done here is something else. I'm bringing in my logs at the same time, and I'm starting to look at logs as well as metrics. And my logs that I'm looking at are going to be specifically my checkout logs, and more specifically, checkout logs that have the word or the string error or exception in them, because I want to find those logs that have an error or an exception in them. I want to go ahead and see that. And when I do, the results are displayed up at the very top of the screen in this orange, well, this white and orange bar, but this bar at the very top. And the way it's displayed is what we call in, I don't know, I guess we don't really have a fancy name for it. I'll call them chunks of time. What the system's doing is showing here how many log messages match this line. So what I see at, for example, 320, the line is white, or the box here is white where my mouse is. And the system's letting me know there were no error messages during that time. Okay. 324 or so, no error messages. But what I see when I go to about 325 is now I see 224 messages that had the word or string error in them, 221 messages, et cetera, et cetera. And then when everything gets back to normal, I see no error messages. So what I want to do is I want to start to look at these error messages, because they should start to tell me what is happening or what is going on, and I want to see that. And these metrics that I'm looking at can be from a variety of different sources of data. So they can be from a single server, they can be from multiple servers. Here in this example, they're different servers. So check out, just different environments. So, and that we'll talk a little bit about that on Thursday with collection. Actually, we'll talk a little bit about that with in a few minutes with our labs. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, like I said, is I'm going to choose one of these times where there are errors because I want to see those errors. I'm going to shift and actually do a click. And what I'm now looking at is a minute in time where things were bad. And what I see are bad messages, as I should. That that kind of makes sense. So what I see here, for example, is error, bad handshake, SSL routine, SSL3 get certificate, certificate verify failed. I see an error with a checkout process cart. I see other stuff. So I see some similar log messages, some that are a bit unique, but I see a lot of log messages. Specifically, I see 220 log messages, well, specifically would be 221. So this is 221 messages showing me that something bad has happened, which is helpful, but it's not as helpful as it could be. What I want to do now is I want to widen my scope or my search. I want to say, don't just show me bad stuff, show me good and bad stuff that has happened. And show that to me over a period of time where things were good as well as bad. So what I'm going to say is show me the last 60 minutes of data, because I know things were good and bad during that period of time. At the same time, I'm going to remove error or exception, because I want to say, basically, show me everything over the last 60 minutes. Show me good, show me bad, warts and all. And so when I run this, I'm going to get all those log messages. And what I see, there's been 24,000 log messages over the last 60 minutes related to our checkout service. And I see each log message. So log message 1, log message 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, etc. 995 pages of them, 25 per page. Now, somewhere in these log messages is going to be an indication of what has gone wrong. It might be a singular event. It might be an event that happened multiple times, but it's something happened. And like I said, it's my job to find that. So how am I going to find possibly a singular event out of 24,000 log messages? Now, one way to do it is I can manually go through these log messages. And I could say, log message 1, anything unique or weird about this? No, kind of normal. Log message 2, looks normal. Log message 3, looks normal. And I could go through 24,000 log messages, and eventually, assuming I'm paying attention, I would find that potentially unique log message that is an indicator of what has gone wrong. But that's silly. That's a waste of resources. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of Sumo Logic. And so we want to show you a better way to do that. And of course, fortunately for you, we have a better way to do that. What we're going to do here is use a feature that we call log reduce. When I click log reduce, what it's going to do is take those 24,000 log messages and group them together based on patterns using algorithms and special sauce and just fancy tech. It's going to do so. It's doing it right now. It'll take 20, 30 seconds or so. And as what we're starting to see are these patterns being grouped together with a count of how many messages we have for each pattern. So for example, I think it's done. We see the first log message here. And there we go. And so what I see here is a payment on gateway, transaction ID. And so this is an example of a successful checkout. Now, remember, we're looking at a period of time where things were good as well as bad. So we'd expect to see some good stuff. And so we see a lot of good stuff. We have 5,000 or just about 6,000 log messages of these, which are kind of a step within the checkout process of somebody who's getting through the checkout process. And that's positive. It's a good thing. If I scroll down to line 5 here, I see some bad stuff. I see error, bad handshake, error SSL routines, server certificate failed. Now I see 906 of those error messages. And while it's helpful to see those error messages, I'm looking for what caused those error messages. Now something didn't happen 906 times to produce 906 errors. Something happened one time to produce a bunch of errors. That might be a little bit of an assumption. I'm going to make that leap because I've done this demo before, but that's what we're going to assume that for today. So what I want to say here is don't show me the things that have happened most frequently over the past 60 minutes. Show me the things that have happened least frequently. And so to do that, I'm just going to take my count and flip it upside down. And what I start to see are some log messages that are unique. Here I see one specifically for the De Vere hotel room, whatever. Here I see one related to American Airlines. But what I should see, and I'm crossing my fingers that they didn't change the demo on me. Let me find, here we go, here it is. What I'm looking for is this log message here. Because this log message is going to tell me what has happened. It happened one time, and it gives me a pretty good indication of what has happened. So what has happened? This log message is related to Travel Logic app starting cluster. So it's our stuff kind of starting up. The service checkout, so that checkout service beginning. And it's using version 1.14 dev code. Well, why is it using development code in a production environment? Oh, somebody made a mistake and they promoted the wrong version of code, which screwed up the server certificates, which blah, 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 messed everything up. And as a result, people couldn't check out. And that was the culprit. And so that's kind of the big ta-da, the big reveal. And what I've done here, which I didn't point out earlier, but intentionally so, is I've actually created a deployed version of on our dashboard. Because imagine this is a common issue in our environment. So what I can see is, what are the latest versions of code? Well, here we see it right there. So I wanted to show that demo as a walkthrough, and let me go ahead and jump into my slide deck for a few moments. Certainly any questions, feel free to ask. And so what I showed there is the demo of monitoring and troubleshooting, which is just one use case for Sumo Logic, but it's a pretty important one. And in that demo, I showed or attempted to show 3 different steps or 3 components of that monitoring troubleshooting. The first portion being alerts, so that we can get a notification via Slack, via email, via many other communication properties. And then we can use the alerts to see the dashboard to see what was going on. So what we saw was red, bad, green, good. I mean, very simplistic. Imagine this screen in a NOC center or a command center environment and somebody walking by. If it's all green, hey, good job, team. If it's red, well, something's not right and somebody is better be working on that. And you can understand that by not understanding Sumo Logic, not understanding Travel Logic. Once again, red, bad, green, good. And in this case, I see that there's a question. The issue, we would then fix the problem by just promoting the right version of code. And so we could go ahead and set an alert in the future that says every time there's a new version of code promoted, send a message to so-and-so that says what version it is. and they could, manually check it out, or, many ways to kind of fix that problem. But James is typing an answer, so I'm curious what he tells David, but I'll let him go on that. So we use those alerts to help us get notified, and staying out of Sumo Logic as well. So the benefit of, you don't have to be logged in. You can get a Slack message and an email message, which can often be noise as well, but assume you properly set them up, can be quite beneficial. Then we use those metrics. So we ingested metrics, or the system did, and the metrics helped us identify what was going on, that CPU spike, that gateway latency. And then we used the logs to determine why it was happening. And like we said, pretty simply, it was just due to bad code being promoted. And so that concludes that little demo. All right. Yeah, I'll keep going here. So Sumo Logic data flow, this is a pretty important slide, really, because it's going to be the basis of what we're going to discuss both today and honestly over the next couple of days if you join for these classes. So step one is data collection. Your data is out there in the world. It might be in a server farm somewhere in Amazon or Google World. It might be on your laptop. It might be a server in the closet. It might be your laptop. There's data out there. And in order for Sumo Logic to help you, the data needs to be collected and brought into Sumo Logic. And that's what data collection is all about, bringing that data in from a variety of different sources, or a single source, depending on how your system, or data is set up, and bringing it into Sumo and then starting to understand it together. So step one is collecting that data. We're not going to go too much deeper in that today. We actually we'll go into a lab that actually looks at collection, but for now, just the idea that data is collected and brought into Sumo Logic magically, even if you will, is kind of good enough for right now. Now step two occurs. So your data is now sitting in Sumo Logic, and now you need to do something with it. And that's where searching and analyzing comes in, and using the operators and the query language to slice and dice your data, representing the data in charts. And so the idea that, you see a pie chart, you see a bar chart, you see that it's green, you see it's red, these indications of understanding can be quite helpful. Then is that third portion, that visualizing and monitoring. So once again, the idea of sometimes ironically staying out of Sumo Logic to go ahead and get alerts that something has happened, good or bad, or other things like that. And so we'll look at that today. So for today, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through pretty much each one of these pieces in the lab. We're going to look at some data that's been collected, then we're going to search and analyze it, and then we're going to create a dashboard and an alert. However, not however, I mean, that's what we're going to do. For more detail on these portions, tomorrow and Thursday are going to be your friend. And I'm saying tomorrow and Thursday based on Pacific time. If you're in Australia, it's already tomorrow. But for today, so we're really going to be focusing on all these and step three. Tomorrow is going to be our search mastery course, and that's really going to focus on step two, that query language, those operators, how you slice and dice stuff, what log reduce does, what that relevance field is, which I'll talk about in a second, John. And then the data collection we'll be talking about on Thursday, which is administration. And so that's how do you get your data into Sumo Logic? How do you set up these collectors that collect data and bring it in? What are all those pieces? So, certainly if these portions are all interesting to you, which hopefully they are, the next few days are going to be a good use of your time. Now, I do have one slide about the collection. Let me see. Yeah, just one slide, well, kind of two, but this is trying to give another just visual approach at the collection. Once again, you don't need to worry about the details too much, but the idea at the top center is that Sumo Logic Cloud, that destination for data. And then around it are all those different sources of data, AWS data, GCP data, and et cetera, et cetera. And based on where your data is located, that's going to determine how you bring your data into Sumo Logic. So data needs to be collected, but we have two different versions of the collector. We have a hosted version and an installed collector version. Let me talk about the hosted version first. So with AWS, with GCP, you want to take your data and send it into Sumo Logic, as you want to do with all your data. Now, how do you do that? What you can do is you can install or utilize a little agent that will essentially grab the data and send it over to Sumo Logic for you. Now, with hosted collectors, with hosted environments, they're ephemeral. They don't live for that long. They get stood up, they get stood down. And so there's not some place to really physically, or not physically, but tangibly install a collector. And so with hosted collection, basically you go into our system and tell us, this is my AWS credentials, this is where my AWS data is located, bring it into Sumo. More secure than that, but that's the gist. The installed collector, though, for older technologies, which I have used many of those, you would actually install the collector somewhere on your network or in your architecture, really, somewhere in your environment. So you would have basically a little agent, if you will, that will grab the data and send it over to Sumo Logic. Once again, secure and complex, but that's basically how it works. In the administration course, we'll actually install a collector together and send data from our laptops to our to Sumo Logic, which is a fun exercise. So certainly don't need to get too bogged down in all these details, but I just thought it was sort of either interesting or relevant. One other detail that I do want to talk about really before we'll get into the labs is metadata. Metadata is not unique to Sumo, but the way we use it is for tagging your log messages that get collected. So when these log messages come into Sumo Logic, and there could be thousands, there's millions, billion, you can have a lot of log messages. We stamp them essentially with something, or essentially stamp them. And so we stamp them with some information, and we also give you the ability to customize that information that is going to be provided. So for example, the first couple of items on here on this list that are not bolded will be applied pretty automatically. So example is the name of the collector, those little agents that are going to get installed, and you can have a lot of them, which is fine, not a bad thing to have a lot of them, but you can have thousands of them. And so stamping your data with the name of that thing that it brought in the data, is that going to be helpful to you or not? Well, maybe. It hopefully will be. We're stamping it for a reason, but it may not be. It may not be a really great way for you to locate your data, because if you do want to look for multiple data sets in one query, do you want to list all those collectors? No, probably not. What we came up with, not like we came up with, but what we use is a metadata tag called a source category. This can be freely configured, and in the administration class, we discuss best practices. What it allows somebody, ideally an administrator in your organization, is the ability to label your data and label it in a naming convention that makes sense or is useful. So for example, a lot of today's exercise, one exercise we do today will be the source category of labs/Apache/access. Now, knowing nothing about Sumo Logic, nothing about Apache or Access or Labs, right away, the name of the source category gives you an indication of the environment. It's lab data. It's not prod data. It's not QA data. It's not dev data. It's lab data. It's lab Apache data. It's not lab O365 data. It's not lab AWS data, which we use for other classes. It's Apache, and specifically Apache access data versus Apache error data, which is another set. And so regardless of if this data was collected from one machine or 10,000 different machines, we can use that source category to easily find it. So source category is good. Let's see, let's keep going here. Let's go ahead and log in now. Yeah, let's do it. Let's log in. So let me go ahead and put these credentials in the chat. And so we're going to go ahead and use these today. So there we go. So the URL for today is going to be service.sumologic.com. Even if you do have a set of Sumo credentials, actually, I assume or hope you have a set of Sumo credentials, but we'll use these for the labs because we have lab data. So just easier to play with our lab exercises. So service.sumologic.com. The email will be training plus analyst number. And I want you to select a 3-digit number. So if you want to be 007, 444, 721, just pick a 3-digit number. And then that password, fingers crossed I set it up properly, should be thanks21 with an exclamation point. So capital T, HANKS, 21, exclamation point. So go ahead and log in. Once you get logged in successfully, if you can let me know the 3-digit number you're using in the chat, that would be helpful. If there's overlap with the 3-digit numbers, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. You should use, well, over the next 2 days, if you join us, you can use the same 3-digit number. Doesn't really matter either. Let's see a little bit more just about these credentials that you're using. Certainly, if you need help, let us know. Probably will be a typo, but still let us know. If you get a bad password for it, besides it being a typo, just select a different number. These training credentials are good for, well, actually I set them yesterday, so they're good until December. Keep in mind they are shared. We do clean up the environment periodically, so don't put anything sensitive, anything you wouldn't want other people to see, that kind of stuff, fair warning. So, all right, looks like a lot of you are logging in. I see there's a little overlap, and that's fine. It really, yeah, that's fine. Let me go ahead and get logged in, and let's do this together. So I want to use the same account as you just to keep us all on kind of the same page here, if you will. And let's see, what else do I need to provide you? I need to point you to the labs. Actually, these labs are easy. So let's do this together. So, so when you log in, actually, this is good. When you log in, somebody may have logged in previously. And so if they did, you can close their previous tab by going to the top, clicking on any of those tabs and choosing close all tabs. And I'd encourage you to do that just so you have a kind of a fresh view. So I'm just going to pause for another second. Okay. So ideally, when you log in, you'll get to this screen. This is really kind of where I want you to be is on this home screen. And it's meant to be a fairly traditional home screen. Let me go ahead, put those. Oh, thank you for, let's see. I'm just going to put that password back in for somebody. Oh, I see what I did. Oh, yeah, let me paste it in for everybody. There you go. I didn't paste it in properly the first time. Oh, thank you, Brandon, as well. So I think we're good over there. So, okay, cool. All right, so on this home page, once again, meant to be like any other home page, get you to kind of jump off and continue once you come back in for a second time as quickly as possible. So things you've recently accessed, recently run, pin searches, stuff like that. And we'll talk about what that stuff is. Up here, you have the ability to do some things. We'll be doing log searches today. That's really all we'll be doing today. We have the Learn tab. And so I want you to come into the Learn tab, one, to promote it, but also this is where we can get our labs. So when we go into the Learn tab, if we go to Hands-on Labs Fundamentals, it might be checked already, that's okay. Go ahead and go to Lab 1 and open it. I'll go ahead and paste the link to the lab directly for the chat as well. Just in case you want to go through that method. So essentially where we should be at is we should have 2 windows open. We should have Sumo Logic and we should have our labs. And it looks like James is going to take care of anybody else, so I think we're good. So let's start to look at Lab 1. So Lab 1. First part, signing in. So we've already signed in, so we're already on our way. But what we want to do is we want to put you in the scenario that you face yourself in exactly right now. What do you do? Where do you start? You have access to a new system. Imagine it's day 1 with Sumo. What do you, where do you go? Well, let's show you what some recommendations are. So the first thing we would encourage you to do is see what data is available in your Sumo Logic instance. If you're going to be setting up your Sumo Logic instance, you probably know, but if you don't, you may not know. Somebody might tell you, hey, work on the Lab Apache data, in which case you know what data is in there and what you're to focus. But let's pretend you don't. So how do we see what data is in Sumo Logic? Well, let's the lab right now. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Sumo Logic and we're going to go to the black bar. It should be open. If it's not, go ahead and click on the 3 horizontal lines next to the word Sumo Logic on the top left to expand it. And then go to Manage Data and go to Collection. Once you do, you are now in the collection screen or environment, and we can now see what data is being collected. Here we see some training data. Here we see some observability data. And there's a lot of data in here. What we can do is we can use the search icon or the magnifying glass and see if there's any Apache data in there. Well, what do you know? There's actually a lot of Apache data because we're going to do an exercise on Apache, which is really, this is the data we want you to kind of notice that's here. Now, this way you may not be able to do in the real world. An administrator can say, I don't want my users looking at the collection screen. It's probably a bit of overkill, but they can do so. And so we're going to show an alternative method here, or different sort of alternative, to doing a similar thing in the next lab. But so now we're seeing all that stuff that's collected. Once again, we'll go into what the collection is in the administration class for Thursday. But here we see, just since I'm in here, I'll just kind of show it real fast. We see the data or the name that we've established. We see it's healthy, which is good. We see how much data has been ingested over the last hour. So a lot of log messages. And we also get a little chart here. So this is helpful to see, consistently over the past hour, we've had data. All right, so let's go back to the lab. And now what I want to do is look at that alternative way, or to getting into what we saw, or similar. And we're going to do so via log search. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into Sumo Logic, or you're still in it. And we can either go to the home screen, or we can go to the plus new button on the top and click on log search. As you'll find, and both through this lab and just through Sumo Logic, there's often two ways to do the same exact thing. Often more than two ways, but usually at least two ways to do the same thing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the data that's been collected through a query. We're going to create a query, or use one. We're not really creating it. It's already in the lab for us. And so the query that we want to use is right here on step 4. So I'm going to copy it and paste it in, and just talk about what it's doing. So what is it doing? It's very simple, but simple in a good way, not a bad simple. What we're doing here is we're saying search all the data. Now, it's not all the data over time or forever. It's going to be over the last 15 minutes by the default. You can change that. I think in the next lab, we'll change the time. And actually, in this lab, we even change the time, I think. No, not yet. We'll change the time in a second, but you can go ahead and change that time. And what I'm doing here is then I'm saying count by source category. So I'm going to click start, or click the magnifying glass search start icon, and my query is going to run. And what it's going to do is going to look at all the data from the last 15 minutes. And of that data, it's going to look for the source category. It's going to then count that source category and tally it up. Once it's done, it then displays those results here in this aggregates tab. And what I can do is I can simply click on the count word, or just the word or header, to filter low to high, high to low. And what I now see here is the highest set of data that's being used is my Kubernetes SE demo mobile banking data. And this, this was a problem where this data, if, not really the main portion of today's conversation, but, if there was an issue where this was using too much data, I now see, this is using a lot, and maybe I should talk to my SE team and have them resize their demo or whatever. I see the second source of data is labs VMware data, and so on and so forth. And what I should see on here, probably on page 2, is my Apache access data. Here it is, line 38. And so once again, kind of two ways to do the same thing, if you will. And if my goal was just to figure out how many log messages have come in over the last 50 minutes for Apache access, well, here's the answer. And so now I've created a query, or I'm utilizing a query. I guess we kind of copied that one. All right, so let's see, any questions? I think looks like we're pretty good. Yeah, let's keep going here. So let's continue with the narrative. So you look at the system, you see what data is in there, and you find there's Apache access data. Oh, good, Apache is useful to my job because I said on my resume I knew how to handle Apache access data. Now, before you just dive in and start creating queries, you can, but we want you to do this next step, which is finding and displaying a shared dashboard. Maybe somebody in your organization has already found or is utilizing this Apache data and has done something with it. They've created a dashboard or something else, and they are sharing it, and maybe you can just, lack of a better word, steal it or use it. Well, let's go ahead and see. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and go to the black bar, which hopefully is still open. It doesn't really close on its own, so it should be open. We're going to go to the library icon. So on the, not the far right, but I guess the right of the black bar, the library icon. And then what we want to do is type Apache space access. Now we might find a lot in here. Hopefully you don't find too much. And what we can do is we can go ahead and open these. So here I see John Meredith has created something related to Apache access. Oh, he's created this Apache overview of different information. Oh, this is good, or oh, it's not. But at least now I've see what he did, and if this is exactly what I needed, if my job was to figure out something related to URL errors, well, he did the work for me. If it's not relevant, all right, that's fine. But at least now I get a feel for something else that somebody has done. Now we are using Apache data today. I mentioned that a few times. Apache data is web server data. So every time you go to a website, a log of your transaction of what you did on that page is captured. And we're going to use status codes throughout the day as really just as a field to use them. If you're familiar with status codes already, great. If you're not, that's fine. But we'll be using them with a 404 is probably the most familiar one to you. When you go to a site and you get a file not found or page not found, you get a 404. When you go to a page successfully, you get a 200. And so, like I said, we'll play with those a little bit today. No need to really remember any of that. All right, so let's go back to lab 1. And now we're going to install an app. And so with the narrative here, we went in, we saw the collection information, we saw the information John or whoever has created. It was good for them, yay, but it's not exactly what I need. Well, once again, before I start creating a query on my own, let me do this next step. And this next step is installing an app. So what I want to do is I want to go into the app catalog. So I'm going to go back into Sumo, going to go back to the black bar and go to the app catalog. Now, what is the app catalog and what's an app? Well, everybody calls an app, has some other term for it or definition for it. What we're referring to when we say an app is we know what log messages look like, and everybody does. It's not really unique, but we know that an Apache log message is going to be structured a certain way. AWS data is structured a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. And what we've done is very simply, we know what the data looks like. We know use cases that might be helpful for that data. And so somebody at Sumo Logic, has gone ahead and created queries and dashboards that will be helpful against a set of data. So let's do it right now. So we're going to go into the app catalog and we're going to look specifically for the Apache app. There's about 200 apps. We can scroll for it, or we can just go to the search and search for it, depending on how lazy we're feeling, I guess. The Apache app we want to use is specifically the Apache with the feather. These other are just not used for today. So we're going to click on this Apache feather icon. What we're going to do is then click Add to Library. Before we do that, if we want, we can preview dashboards and see what it's about to provide us. These are not actual, this is not our actual data. This is just screenshots of what we're doing. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add to Library. Once I have this portion here, I'm going to go ahead and give the app a name. Now, typically the name we provide is sufficient. For today, especially if you're using an account with somebody else, either intentionally or not, just go ahead and give the app a sort of, unique name, number, something, like I said, just something fairly unique. And then what we're going to do here in the source category is we're going to go ahead and specify the source category. And so what should be in that lab guide is labs/Apache/access. The search ahead or type ahead should help you find it. So I'm just going to kind of pause here to make sure we're all together. Yes, user community feedback regarding apps to integrate is very helpful. So please provide feedback about that, Thomas. That's the best way to get them added. Later I can show you, we have some others that are available, but I'll show you a good place to leave feedback actually. So once I have my name being whatever and my source category being specifically this, I'm going to click Add to Library. When I do, the system is taking, actually it's not taking, it's referencing my lab Apache Access data that's been ingested into Sumo. It's referencing these queries and dashboards that somebody at Sumo has created. And for lack of a technical phrase, it's smushing the two together. And what I get is now this output. So now if I go to Apache Overview, I see the Apache Overview. It's very similar to the dashboard we saw that somebody else created, but that's not really the point. So what I see is this information here. Now, these should have populated. I'm not really going to dig into that right now. Yeah, they should have populated, and we could troubleshoot that, but that's not really the point of the exercise. So, but hopefully you got a dashboard to load, hopefully the map loaded, and the other ones, just these top ones, may not have. All right, cool. Let me, let's see, questions. For the no data display, go ahead and, like I said, make sure the other ones, and if it's no data, it possibly just a typo, just to be honest. And so you can just redo that app. All right, so let's go back to the lab. Oh, then one more step here. Yeah, got it. Okay, thanks, Matt. So the next step here, and for those of you that are getting no data, just scroll down a little bit on that page. And I apologize for that. Yeah, I just don't know why it's erroring, excuse me. Now, the last step of this lab, this is a long lab, I forgot how long this one is to share this data with someone else. So let's say kind of our narrative, we came into the system, we've figured out Apache Access data is relevant to us. We looked at what somebody else did. It wasn't what we needed. We looked at what Sumo provided, and that happened to be great, of course. And now we want to share this with our manager because he or she wants to know about Apache Access data. That's why they hired you, to dig into this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to share this well, we can share anything, but we're going to share the dashboard that we created. Or actually, we're going to, share the just the whole app. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our personal folder, and we're going to look for the app we created. And if we don't see ours, we can use someone else's. It doesn't really matter. We're going to click on the three dots, and we're going to go ahead and click Share. And then we can just decide who in our organization do we want to share this with. Do I want to share this with everybody in my company? Do I want to share this with just my administrators? Do I want to share this with just Akesh and the administrators? Do I want them to just be able to view? You can really start to get granular. And what I'd encourage you to do, not really for this exercise, but in the real world, is then put an email. So, hey, Akesh, check out, these numbers, or whatever, something more meaningful than that. All right, so let's see. I think we're doing okay. Let me go back to, let's see, the lab we're done with. Let me go back to my deck just to kind of keep me honest here. So with the deck, I don't rely too heavily on it. We'll send it to you later. But what we have here is just, once again, the two different options on how to analyze, starting to see what shared content is available, using the app catalog, and then doing the lab. So, like I said, that's why I don't really use it too much. All right, now lab 2 is going to be searching for log data. And so we're going to start to use the query language, and I will, I'll use the lab. I'll use the slides later. Let's go ahead and just do the lab itself. So this is going to be lab 2 searching for log data. So let's say, once again, in our narrative, we know there's Apache access data, and now we want to start to analyze it. So how do we do that? Well, this is the lab. So once again, we're going to do a new log search, and I encourage you to do a new one each time you do a query. Each time you do, it's going to create a new tab with a increased number and just sequentially add them to the right. So for this query, what we're going to do here is we're going to copy the step of line 2. And we're going to go ahead and paste it in. Now, before I do that, or before I run it, in step 3, it does want us to change the time. So I alluded to the ability to change the time earlier, and now we're going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on the time. Currently, it should be last 15 minutes. And we can go to last 60 minutes and set that. And so now it's going to look at the last 60 minutes. Now, what data is it going to look at for the last 60 minutes? It's going to look at the Lab Apache Access data. It's not going to look at the AWS data. It's not going to look at the Google data. And it's going to look for the keyword of get, or the string of get. So it's going to look at this data set, and within this data set, it's going to be looking for this word or string. And so now let's see it. Let's do it. Click the search icon. Sumo is going to do its thing, and the results are going to pop out. Now, what do we see here in the results? What we see here are the total number of results. So over the last 60 minutes, there's been 32,224 log messages in the Apache Access data set that has the word get. We see each log message just here in the results. We see the word highlighted, so that string that matched gets highlighted. So each log message will have the word get. It might not be in the same spot. It probably will be because it's all Apache data, but it could be anywhere. And we start to see those log messages. We see the source category down here, just to kind of help us confirm what's being shown. We see a histogram in the top. What this is showing us is, once again, these logical time slices. Basically, it's looking at the last 60 minutes and breaking it down into 1-minute chunks, and then showing us how many log messages occurred specifically within that 1-minute period. Sometimes this is really helpful. Sometimes it's not, but it is there. So you can hide it as well. And then, like I said, I have my log messages. For each log message, I have the date and time from the log message, and then I have the message itself in raw format. Now, one other thing. When I ran my results, your results might not match mine one. Hopefully they're kind of similar. But remember, when I click start, my 60-minute window is as such. If you click start even a second later, your 60-minute window is different from mine and could have different results. And that's fine, just really more of a FYI. All right, let's go back to the lab. So now we have our results. We have the word get highlighted like I just showed you. And now what we're going to do is we're going to parse the messages. So what is parsing? What parsing is essentially filtering data and giving field labels to it. So let's look at an example, because that was not a great explanation of what it is. So here I have my log message. Now, for example, and we should parse, I don't know why I don't use this example, I should going forward. But at the front of each log message, I see an IP address. Now, I recognize this as an IP address. It follows the format of one. It's what one should look like. And hopefully you recognize it as an IP address as well. But you may not, and that's fine. No real. Yeah, you should recognize that as an IP address. I take that back. But if you don't, that's fine. But the system doesn't. I need to train the system to recognize that something like this is an IP address. Continuing with that theme of recognizing, I need the system to recognize this right here. Now, what is this right here? It's that status code I mentioned earlier. So how can I train the system or tell the system to recognize this to be a status code? Well, the way I can do it is I can have it recognize patterns, or you use pattern recognition. And that's what we're going to do with parsing. What we're going to do is we're going to have the system look at the log message, look for a specific portion of the log message that's consistent, and then go ahead and train the system, if you will. Now, I keep saying train the system, and that's probably over. Oops. Well, there are ways to automate that. So we'll look at something on Thursday called field extraction rules that allow parsing to occur automatically. And we highly encourage you to use them. In fact, we sort of encourage you not to parse this way. For learning how to, I think it's helpful, but ultimately this would be done by an administrator and kind of automated. But like I said, we'll just talk about that a little later. So I want the system to look at portions of this log message. I want the system to look at this portion. After the word get is going to be something, and then HTTP 1.1. Now this something is going to represent the portion of the website that you or the visitor went to. In this case, they were trying to load view their shopping cart. Here they were trying to download a case study PDF, etc. So I want us to have the system figure out what this is. I want the system to figure out what this is, that status code. I want the system to figure out what this next 4-digit number is. This next 4-digit number is the size. When you went to get that case study, how many bytes were loaded? So this is bytes, not megabytes, not terabytes, just bytes. And then it's going to be another URL, a referrer. How did you get to this website? You came from Google, you came from Excel, etc. So how do I get the system, once again, as of kind of repeating, to learn how to do this? Well, let's do it. So here's one way to do this. Once again, many different ways to do this. Some are automated, some just different, but this is one certainly good way to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight a log message. It doesn't matter which one, because they all should and do follow the same format. So keep in mind, this only works if the log messages are standardized in that way, which they should be. That's kind of the point of log messages. But if they weren't, there's other ways to approach this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my mouse on the word get, specifically those quotes, highlight get, highlight this thing, highlight HTTP 1.1, keep dragging to the right, and finally highlight that URL. Or we're going to call it a referrer, but we recognize it as URL. And so hopefully I have that whole thing highlighted. Once again, it doesn't matter which log message I do it for. If I didn't highlight the right stuff, just redo it. And so what I'm going to do here is right click on this once I have it highlighted and choose to parse the selected text. Now I have that log message that I just highlighted, nothing really super powerful there, I guess. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this UI to start to label these fields. So I'm going to highlight the portion in between get and in between HTTP 1.1. When I do, I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it, drag it across the whole portion. Once I let go of the mouse, I'm going to have this ability to click to extract this value. When I do, and I click to extract this value, that thing that I just highlighted is going to turn into a star, representing the fact that I can now give this field a name. Now, what do I want to call this field? Well, I can call it whatever I want. I think we encourage you to call it URL because that's what it is. But you could call it really whatever you want. Now what I'm going to do is grab this 3-digit number, click to extract this value, comma. I can call this thing whatever I want. A status code is a pretty good name for it because that's what it is. But we could call it SC. Whatever we want. Going to grab the 4-digit number, highlight, click to extract this value, comma size, and then I'm going to copy the URL inside the quotes. And call that a referrer. Now, I should have 4 stars on top. I should have 4 fields on the bottom. If I don't have the correct number lined up, I can't submit. Assuming I can submit, I'm going to click submit. And what's going to happen is the system is going to paste that thing we just did into the query. And now it's going to use this pattern. So what it's going to do when I click start, it's going to look at the log message and it's going to say, can I find the word get? Or specifically quote get. can I find the word or string HTTP 1.1? If I can, call the thing in between that a URL. Then look after the 1.1 quote. Do you see a space? Do you see a number? That number is the status code, and so on and so forth. And now when I click start or search, I should have 4 fields created with values from the log message. So now I have a referrer field, a size field, a status code field, and a URL field. And then I still, on the far right, have my log message. Now what we're going to do, or we'll do shortly, is now we could say, all right, how many status codes do I have? Or what are the unique status codes? Or how many people came from LinkedIn? How many people came from Google? And start to get that data, which can be quite informative, quite valuable too. All right, so let's go back to the lab. Hopefully we're all together. We should have completed step 11. Also, if you, I encourage you to do what we did, but you certainly can also just copy the query and paste it in. Not going to get too much deeper into parsing today. That's going to be covered tomorrow. So, if you have a question, I think some of you were asking already and James was answering. That's fine, of course. But like I said, tomorrow we really will go deeper in it. All right. So what we want to do now is we want to save a search. Let's say in our narrative here, you've created this query. It's good. This is valuable information and you want to save the search. How do you save the search? Well, pretty easy. Go to the top right, or not the top right, the query screen. So not the top right 3 buttons, this one, and go to Save As. By default, remember, it's going to have that search 5 or that sequential search number, but we'd encourage you to give it a name. So call it JP Apache or whatever name you want. You can decide where in your personal folder to save it. For now, of course, we're going to just encourage you to save it to the default because it's easy. And when you click save, what you should see is now if you go to your personal folder, you should see 2 folders. You should, or one new one, but you should see, so you should see your search here, and you should also see that Apache app we created earlier. And also like I have, it could be just other people's stuff in here. And now if we ever want to use that search again, we can go ahead and grab it. The other thing we can do with the search, let me just make sure, is we can also share it. So we can go ahead and take this search and share it with somebody else, similar to the way we can share an app. All right, let's see. So lab 2, that goes through the steps. I just have a slide here I'll go through. We'll cover this in much more detail tomorrow, but just for those of you that can't attend tomorrow or don't want to, I think this is a good slide. So 2 slides I want to show you here. Let me start with this one first, I think. So what we want to do with our queries, and you'll see this as we continue creating more queries or doing more labs, is the idea of basically a funnel. And at the top of the funnel, you just start throwing stuff in there. And at the bottom of the funnel, you want just the good stuff to come out. And so that's what we're doing is we're taking keywords and metadata and logs and ultimately coming out with data that we want. Now here's it's the same thing really, but a similar slide that's starting to show the query syntax. Now we haven't gone through all these steps yet. We will, but just to show you kind of where we're headed. So we already did the source category. We showed you how metadata works and described metadata, and hopefully you got a feel for it a little bit. And keywords. So we put that together. Once we had that data, we had a whole bunch of data. I was going to use a different word, but we had a whole ton of data. Then what we want to do is start to organize that data by parsing it. So starting to give it field labels of a URL, a status code, a size, etc. What we're going to do now and where we could go is now we could continue with that. We could start to filter that data, and we could say, only show us status codes that match 5 because those are server errors, or only status codes that match 4 because those are client errors, or show us, whatever. Then we can count by the status code. We saw a count earlier. We'll be doing this, and then we can start to format it. So only show us, 3 results, sort those counts. And so that's the idea of taking the data, sticking it in that funnel, and kind of like I said, really the good part comes out. For the query language, if you're familiar with SQL, you'll know Sumo pretty well. Not required to know it, but just if you do, it helps. It's very SQL-esque. All right, let's see, that completes lab 2. So let's naturally go on to lab 3. So in lab 3, what we're going to do is we're going to aggregate our results. Now we should have our query already. If you closed that window, you can just grab the query from here, or if yours wasn't working, just grab it fresh. But what we want to do is we want to count by status code. So what we have before we count by status code is we have our data. We have status codes. But what if we want to see how many unique status codes we have and how many of them there are? How many 304s are there? How many 200s? Is there a status code of 600? I don't know. Let me have the data show me that. Now, before we do the count by status codes, all the data is going to be in the messages tab with the raw message. When we do the parsing, even though it's still the raw message, the parsing modifies the view, but we're not manipulating the data. Or, well, we're not really manipulating the data, but we're not really doing anything with it. When we do count, we are going to do something with the data. We're going to use the operator, the verb, if you will. And what we do is we get the results on a different tab when we do that action. Now, to add a new line to the query, you're going to do is Shift Enter. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. You can customize that to make it an enter, but Shift Enter will give you a new line. And when I ran that, like I said, I now have that new tab called Aggregates. And now I see all the status codes from the last 60 minutes of the Apache Access that have the word get. So remember, still filtering by that as well. And add the count. And what I see here, sorting the count, is the most dominant or the highest number of status codes are 200s. Well, that's good. Remember, 200 is a positive message. I see a bunch of 304s. Well, that might not be good. And then I can start to decide or make decisions of how to impact this, or is this bad, is this good? But I'm getting the data, which is really most important. Now, this data expressed the way it is helpful. By default, it's going to be put into a tabular or table view, but there are other ways to express that data, and we'll get into that shortly. But before we do, we need to add the time slice. So I was going to jump into transpose, but I forgot this middle step. This middle step is a pretty good step. It's a pretty helpful feature, very helpful feature, actually. And the feature we're going to use is time slice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab just this whole query just to kind of just make it fresh. And I'm going to turn off 2 lines. So I'm going to kind of go back to where I was earlier with the parsing. Hold on. There we go. So I'm back to where I was parsing earlier. Now, what I want to do here is I want to count by time slice and status code. Now, what is time slice going to do? Why is this something why am I telling you about time slice? Time slice is going to be helpful here. When I ran my query earlier, I did that count. I was looking at my data for the last 60 minutes, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, that 1 hour block, or 4:15 to 5:15, whatever. When I do my time slice, what I can do is I can start to look at the data in groups of time, in this case by 1 minute periods. And I can then group the results by those periods. So I can see how many 404s did I have from 3 o'clock to 3:01? How many 500 errors did I have from 4:01 to 4:02? The times being. And so that can start to give me periods of time, which can help me see where things are going wrong. And so that's what I'm going to do here. What I'm doing on this third line is I'm saying, use the time slice, run the time slice operator, and now display the results of the time slice and the status code. And so when I click start, in my aggregates tab, I'm now going to have those time slices, those 1 minute chunks. And now what I see is, for example, in the first line, I see from 4:54 to 4:55, because they're 1 minute time slices, I see there were 4 500s. From 4:57 to 4:58, there were 81 304s, and so on and so forth. Now, on its own, this well, hopefully is helpful. It may not be. Like I said, it should be, but we're going to take it a step further to make it more helpful. But that's what this is showing now. Now, why do I want to make this more helpful? Isn't this great? Isn't this showing me different status codes, different time periods and how many they are. Isn't that useful information? Well, it is. It's great information. The problem with the information is it's not displayed in a way that's really helpful to me. Because if I wanted to know how many, the amount of 500s, have those gone up or down over the past hour in those 1 minute periods? Well, I could kind of figure it out if I click on the status code, and if I find the 500s, and I can kind of see, yeah, they're going up and down, but they're not sorted by time here, so that's not really helping me. So I can't really see that. So what I want to do here is I want to transpose the data. What transpose is going to allow me to do, or allow the system to do for me, is take my data and turn it into essentially an Excel table, or the look and feel of an Excel table, where I'm going to have a row and a column and then a cross hash or intersection of a value. And that's exactly what's occurring here. I'm saying transpose, take my data and turn it into that Excel look and feel. Probably trademark, I shouldn't say Excel, a spreadsheet look and feel. Make the rows time slices, and make the column status codes, excuse me. And when I click start, what I should get is that spreadsheet look and feel, where on the left in the column, or on the far, this column is showing me these rows of time. So 416, 417, 418. I see at the top my status codes, and then I see the counts. And so now if I was interested in 404s, I see, oh, it goes 13 to 18 and then to 10. And I can start to see it goes down, goes up, goes down. And it's there. It's kind of tangible for me. Now, it's tangible for me, but it might not be that helpful for me. Like I said, for these 404s, I see it goes up, goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes up again, it goes down, so on and so forth. Now, is that helpful for me to go to somebody and say, hey, it went up, it went down, it went up, up, down, down, up, down, up? No, probably not. And some people can visually see it going up and down here. But I need, and I visually can from the numbers, but just the whole visual component, we can add more value here. And to do so, or how to do so, is just by clicking on one of the other charting options. I can put this data in a bar chart, column chart, a line chart, a pie chart. We have a map icon, which mapping is not appropriate here. We'll look at that a little bit later, but I have all these different visual methods that I can use. And so I want to select one that's most helpful to either myself or my audience. Probably more helpful to my audience, I guess. And so what we should have just done is now created the chart, clicking on the column chart. If you want to use a bar chart or a line chart, you can. We're not going to tell anybody. It's perfectly fine to click around, try a different chart. Now, the problem with this chart that we want you to look at or notice is it's hard to read. Here, for example, these 200s are represented by these kind of aqua bluish color. And so visually, I can see they go up, they go down, up, down, up, up. I see that visual component now there, which is really great. The purple ones down here, these 304s, I can kind of see they go up and down. The problem I have with this chart, though, is these smaller values, these yellows, these pinks, I can't see if they go up and down because due to scale, there's not very many of them. And due to scale, they're smushed. It's not clear. And so how can I modify this situation? How can I make this more clear? Well, two ways to approach this. The first is I can go into the legend of my chart and I can just turn off the 200s and the 304s. By turning off those values, I'm hiding those values. And now since those are removed, the scale of everything is adjusted and now these other values become a little bit easier to read. So that's one approach I could take to this. Another approach I could take to it is to modify the query itself. And what I'm doing here with the modification of the query is I'm saying, grab all the status codes like we just did, and do not include, that's what the exclamation points means, not include status codes 200 or 304. And so now when I run this query, those results are automatically filtered out. And so it's kind of, once again, the same end result. Those aren't visible, but it's, do I turn them off in the legend or do I remove them entirely from the query? And, once again, your decision to make. All right, let's see. think that's pretty good. All right, let's see, what do we have left here? Let's do one more and then we'll take a break. Yeah, let's do lab 4. So lab 4 is creating and sharing a dashboard. So with our narrative, once again, like we've been doing, we've now created this dashboard. Technically this is a panel, but this dashboard of information. And this graph is great. This solves all of our problems. It's going to save the day. Now, what do I do with this thing? Well, what I can do is now share it. And that's what we want to show you. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to a dashboard, because right now I just have a panel of information. And I could send this panel to somebody, but I want to add it into a broader dashboard. So to do so, I'm just going to click Add to Dashboard. It's pretty easy. I'm going to give the panel a name. So imagine this, you'd want to give a name that's sort of an indication of what the heck you're looking at. So probably would want to call it something like, yeah, I already saved Apache status code -200 304. But you don't have to be that elaborate with the name. And then I'm going to specify what dashboard I want to save this to. Now, if I have an existing dashboard, that's great, but in this case, we want you to create a new one. So what you want to do is for the dashboard, call it, initials and number or something like that. And then click Create New Dashboard. You're going to create in the old UI. I need to modify the queries in the UI. It's very similar. It's just the one little feature I haven't done yet. But so go ahead and choose the old UI for now. Just it works better. And then go ahead and click Add. When you do, if all went well, you should have a new screen with a dashboard with your name, and then it should have your panel with your name. Once you're in there, hopefully you're there. What we're going to do is we're going to actually, by default, you're in edit mode. So it says about clicking the edit icon. It's actually by default. You don't even need to do that step 1 anymore. But what we're going to do is do step 2, adding a text panel. And so, once again, in narrative, we have our dashboard, and we want to leave a note in here for somebody. Well, we can go ahead and do so. Notes. So we can type anything. This graph is good. Not feeling that creative with my my notes today, but certainly something more significant might be helpful for somebody in there. The other thing we can do in here is change the look and feel of it. So we have kind of a WYSIWYG environment where we can drag and drop, and it's what you see. So kind of move it around, make it bigger, make it larger. Maybe our notes should go on the left. Whatever that. This is the way I want to format my data. Probably not the best way, but whatever, I can modify it. The other thing that I would encourage, not to say the notes I wouldn't, but is toggling the theme. This white is just it hurts. This dark theme is personal preference. And so now once I'm done editing, I'm done editing. And now what we can do is go ahead and share this. So similar to the way we've shared other things, we can share this. So I'll go ahead and click on share, and then we can share it. The other thing we can do, or really more notice you can do, is if you go back and look at your personal folder, you should now see a dashboard with that name. And what you can do from here is share it as well. So, same difference, but you can do that. And so share it, and then send it off to these individuals, and they read the note, and now they know what to do with it. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's take a break now. So we're pretty good through the labs. We'll have a few when we come back, and then we'll take the exam. But let's do a a full 10-minute break. We have time. So we'll do a 10-minute break, and we go ahead. There, it's going to start. And when we come back, we'll continue. For dark mode, so there was a couple questions, but I'll let the timer get going. For dark mode, what we did is we went to the edit, and under the 3 dots should have been that toggle theme. The other way we added notes is we went, and it's not really, well, yes, we added notes, is we went to add panel. So 3 dots and add panel. We can do a title, or we can do text, which is just the two kind of together. And so that's a helpful way to, yeah, you add notes or anything you want to add in there. All right, cool. So let's see. So let's go ahead and, yeah, time is ticking. 9 minutes and counting. I'm going to go ahead, step away, get a beverage. I'd encourage you to do so, or a little snack, and then we'll come back, do a couple labs, and yeah, continue. So thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, welcome back. Although I guess you still have 8 seconds. Hopefully you had a nice little break, and we'll continue. So let's do so. So yeah, onward. So what we're going to do now is we're going to modify a dashboard. So for this exercise, what we want to do is we want to go back into the Apache overview that we created using the app. So earlier we went to we created that app. So I want you to go to your personal folder, go to your apps folder. If you can't find yours in there, you can use someone else's, although I probably shouldn't say that, but it doesn't really matter for this exercise. And go specifically to the Apache overview. And ideally, you should have a screen that looks like this. And once again, if you're getting no data to display, scroll down. We don't need those top tabs for today. So once again, make sure you have this screen or pretty similar to it. So what do we want to do here? Well, we want to modify a dashboard, hence the title, not that creative. But what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Well, what we want to do is we want to use this visitor location. I mentioned maps earlier, and I wanted to show them here. We go into these more detail in really every class we do. The maps are a pretty important feature, also a really easy feature to use. But what we want to do is we want to modify this dashboard, because right now we're looking at visitor locations and we're looking at worldwide information. So we're seeing on a global level where our people are logging in from, where they're coming from, which is great. Could be useful for marketing purposes, infrastructure purposes, millions of reasons why data is good. So what we want to do here is we want to modify the dashboard to only look at the United States. So for this example, we want to be US centric, as we are sometimes in the US, and we only want to look at US data. So how do we do that? How do we take this query, this dashboard that's populated with a map of the world, and specify what we want to filter? Well, that's what the lab's all about. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the box we're interested in, and when we kind of hover over the visitor location box or panel, those 3 dots should appear on the top right, specific for the panel we're in. And what we're going to do is we can go ahead and open these. We can also edit these. In this case, we're going to specifically edit, but we could open and search. We're just not going to here. And what we see here is the query. So of our dashboard, here on the bottom is the visual presentation of it. And at the top is the query that was used to create it. Now, the portion that we're interested in for today is this portion right here, this line right here. I'm going to do a shift enter, or yeah, just do a shift enter, just kind of show this line. This line is using a lookup table. And what this lookup table is doing is essentially taking the IP addresses that exist within those Apache access log messages, associating those with the physical location, and then displaying that information, displaying the latitude, the longitude, some other regional information, such as country code, country name, etc. And what I can do with my query here is I could add the line of where country name equals United States. So similar how in the previous exercise we did where status code does not equal 200 or 304, it's that kind of idea. Now when I click search, the system is only going to show United States data because I'm only looking where country name equals United States. I could specify another country in there. I could specify a particular region. I could specify a city. Once again, not going too deep in that right now. Tomorrow we will, but that's what I can start to do. Now that I've modified the query, I can run it and I can see my results. Once I'm happy with my results, or content at least, I can then click the Update Dashboard button. And what that's going to do is now take that visitor location global map and rewrite it with just the United States focus. So I wanted to show you how to edit a dashboard panel, because sometimes that might be what you want to do. When we loaded that Apache app, imagine this, well, exactly the scenario we just did. It's good data, but you want to tweak it. Similarly, just a quick tangent, here we're looking at the top 10 URLs. Well, I can go ahead and edit. Instead of looking at the top 10, I can say look at the top 5. And now I'm looking at the top 5. I do have to rename the title. That doesn't change automatically, but I can start to modify my queries in that way. So just wanted to show that to you. Yeah, I think it's important enough to show. And that's really it for that step. So let's go on to lab 6. Now lab 6 is creating an alert. I'm going to kind of caveat this lab. Well, let me let me continue, and then I'll show you why I'm hedging a little of it. This is about creating an alert. What we're going to do here is we're going to use, once again, that the same dashboard that we just used, the Apache visitor location one. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to open it in search. So we're going to click on the 3 dots, and rather than just editing the query, we're going to do an open search. It's going to do basically the same thing, except it's going to open it in the search window. So once again, here's the query at the top, the results at the bottom. It's just US because that's what I'm focusing on. And now what I'm going to do is create an alert. Now, well, let's start. I'll show you where I'm hedging. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the 3 dots, and I'm going to choose to save as. Now, we did save as earlier, but we're not going to do that right now, although you're welcome to save it, of course. What we are going to do is schedule this search. By scheduling the search, we're first going to pick a time range. How frequently do we want this search to replicate or run, essentially? Every 15 minutes, every hour, every day, whatever. Every 6 hours. What I can then do, or what I can have happen, is every 6 hours, this query is going to run. And what I could do is send the results of this to myself or my manager, or whomever. And I can start to customize what information is in that email. Do I want to include the search results? Do I want to include the search query, the histogram, things like that? What do I want to have included in the email? Now, here's where let me specify the word alert here is not the word I would use. This lab is called creating an alert. What we're doing here is, in transparency, we're creating a query that is going to run every 6 hours and have us send those results or get those results sent to us. So every 6 hours, query is going to run, it's going to send this to us in our email. We'll look at the email and do something or not with it. Now that, in my mind, is not truly an alert. It's more of a scheduled running of a report or a query, which is helpful and a super important feature, but in transparency, it's not really an alert. It's not based off of something else, or I guess it's based off of time, but it's not based off of any other dimension or thing. What I do want to show you, and I don't have a lab for it yet, I need to create one, is where you can create more of a traditional alert where you will get notified when something happens X amount of times or doesn't happen. So for example, like I said, no lab, I'm just going to show this. And actually, you might be able to do this going to manage data monitoring. I'm going to add a new monitor. What this allows me to do is then put a query in here, well, a much better query than this. But what I could do is say, alert me when the result is greater than 10 every 5 minutes, or send me a warning if it's greater than 5 or 6. And so now, during a quantifiable period of time with a quantifiable result, then I get a notification in my email or whatever method of notification is selected. And that's more of a traditional alert. And so just in transparency, even though this lab is creating an alert, like I said, it's really more creating a scheduled search. There is a thing actually called a scheduled search, but I don't want to get into that right now either. So, but just like I said, just really more in transparency. Eventually, or not eventually, we will update this lab to really more point to that monitoring portion I just showed you, but just thought you should know this anyhow. All right, and this last portion is certainly important, but kind of quick, is getting help. So how do you get more, help from Sumo? Well, kind of the ways we've started to look at. So we looked at this Learn tab, or we looked at this Learn tab. And so there's the ability to look at documentation on here, release notes, our community forum. Our community is really helpful for interacting with other Sumos and non-Sumos. So if you're working on something and you want to interact with somebody else, great way to do so. We have actually a chat version as well, a Slack version, excuse me. Let's see what else in here. Labs. So we pointed out those labs. documentation, and just other, other really good ways to get help. Here's just a little bit about the community. You don't need to post a question. I know it has you do one, but it's just to show you that it exists. Our customer Slack experience, we have that. So yeah, just reminding you many different ways to get help, and that's going to be in that help or that documentation method of getting assistance is going to be important when we take the exam, and I'll talk about that in just a few seconds. So going to kind of wrap up the class portion because we got through all the labs. That was the goal. Let's see, questions. It looks like there's a couple. One was about, do our labs cover integrating an alert with PagerDuty? Not currently, but can be done, and we probably should create a lab on that. But certainly if you need help, let us know. It's pretty documented in the system.
Yeah, I was going to send a couple of links to that question.
Oh, perfect.
So
Even
they
better.
can check it out.
Yeah.
It's just taking me a little while to get to them, but yes, we integrate through webhooks because there was another question related to it in the chat. So you can create a webhook to something like PagerDuty or Slack or Jira or Opsgenie or several different ones, including bespoke ones. So if you have a bespoke application and you have it enabled with a webhook, then you can do that as well. So I'll post that link when I grab it and answer the question.
I wanted to actually show it, but I realized I don't have access as the analyst. Let me just see if I could show that webhook portion real fast, just because it's been asked about. So any more questions you have, go ahead, please, ask. This is a good portion too. Otherwise, we'll get into the exam in just like 30 seconds. Let me just see if I can show this portion. I just want to show those webhooks. Here they are. So under monitoring, under connections, here are some that are set up. But just do so with PagerDuty. And once again, the documentation he's setting is much more formal, but essentially it's kind of fill in the blank here in a good way, pretty easy. So cool. Let's see. I think we're pretty good so far. All right, yeah, let's talk about this exam now. So for this exam, what we're going to, let me get to my slides here for my exam. There we go. So what we're about to do is take an exam, and or you are, I passed mine already. This exam is going to be free for you, free for your organization. You're going to want to take this exam as your private or personal or corporate Sumo account. You don't want to take it as training user 423 because we don't want training 423 to get the credit. We want Bob and Jennifer to get credit for the exam. So please take it as your own personal, private, corporate account, which everybody should have. If you don't, let us know, but you really kind of should if you attend this class. The exam is going to have 30 questions. It might be closer to 25 now, but about 30 questions. You're going to have 60 minutes to take it. That's going to be a lot of time. You're not going to need all that time. So you have it allocated to you, but you won't. 75 to pass it. Now, it's an open resource exam, meaning it's open Google, it's open documentation, it's open labs, it's open Sumo Logic exam. Intentionally so. You have access to these sources of documentation in the real world, and so I think you should have them for an exam. And we want you to rely on the documentation. I've worked at many, we've all worked at many places, but I've worked at many places where documentation was not good. I worked at a giant search engine company that rhymes with the word Oogle, where documentation just it's not really part of the customer experience, customer success experience. Sumo, it is. Sumo documentation we're proud of, and so I want you to be able to rely on that. So that's the other part of this exam is to kind of prove to you that the docs are good. So let's go ahead and how do we get into the exam? So once again, go ahead and log in. Once you've done so, and I'll go through these steps a few times, so if you're not up to me yet, that's fine. In regards to your user, it will show you at the bottom left what user you're logged in for, or as rather, excuse me. And so, once again, this should say John or Jennifer, not training admin. Once we're in here, we're going to go to certification. So home probably by default, and then certification. And then we're going to click get certified. When we do, it should take us to this portal. This portal is going to have the training password. So in the future, if you need those training credentials, this is where you can find them. They're not going to change again for a while, but that's how to do it. So once again, home, certification, get certified. Once you're in here, we're going to select the course that we are interested in. So today we're doing fundamentals, and so we're going to select fundamentals, which is this weird blue color. Once in fundamentals, we have a couple different options. What we want to do is fundamentals exam. We do have a self-paced course. You're welcome to do the self-paced course. It's basically what you just went through repeated on your own at a self-paced pacing. And then the fundamentals exam. We do have it in Japanese and Spanish. I really encourage English. Well, you know what? If you're native speaking, go with any of them. They're all up to date. So yeah, if you want to choose the other ones, that's fine. Yeah, any of them are good. You'll select the exam that's appropriate. So for most of you, it will just be the fundamentals exam, the good old basic English one. You'll click it. You'll register for free. Once again, no charge for anybody. You'll click start. It's going to give you the guidelines, pretty much the same guidelines I just told you. You'll click next. You'll start the assessment. I know this is probably obvious, but the next step isn't, is why we're doing this. And if you're getting an error, we'll address that error in just a second. If you're getting a loop or something like that, I'll show you how to resolve that. Once you take the exam, you'll answer all the questions and you'll click next. You'll get your score. Hopefully it will be better than this. And then it's important that you click submit. If you don't click submit, you actually won't get credit for the exam, which is a bummer and is bad UI, not Sumo UI, this exam platform we use. I don't like it. Or that's one of the reasons. So important that you do click submit. All right, so let's go back to some questions because I know I see just some that are occurring. So I'm just going to kind of naturally get ahead of them. One thing that you might have happen is when you log in to Sumo and then click on get certified or certification tab, you get a loop back. Either you get brought back to the home page or usually the home page or some page you're not supposed to be on. If that occurs, you're going to want to do these steps. On the black bar, you're going to want to click on the help icon or the help word. Underneath help, you're going to click community. When you open the community, or you should click on community, it should say something about an email verification being sent to your inbox, which it will. Then go to your inbox and grab that email. The email might appear in your spam, so just keep that in mind. It might take a few moments to get to you. The reason you get the email is it's related to also not Sumo, it's the test platform. It's a weird SSO issue. So usually this happens more for those organizations that are using SSO through Sumo Logic. They'll get that error. If you don't, great. I mean, all the better. Just keep doing your thing. But if you do get looped back, this is how to fix that. So I'll leave this up on the screen for a moment, and then I'll go back to another slide. Let's see. So questions we should be, getting pretty good. The email you should use for the exam is, so you should have a corporate email account. Someone should have provided you one. If you don't, you can sign up for one. I'm not really supposed to recommend this, but I want you to do your work. So let me go ahead and I'll just put a link in. Sumo Logic. Oops, I can't type. So you can sign up for a account if you need, but I encourage you not to. The exam that you're going to choose is, so get certified, is going to be fundamentals. So fundamentals, and then specifically fundamentals exam. So yeah, if you have a production account, absolutely. Let's see, any other questions? I'm trying to think of any other questions you might have, just getting ahead of them, but I think that should cover most of the scenarios. So, I'm certainly going to shut up in a second and let you take the exam in silence, just to kind of wrap up. So you'll have an hour once you start the exam. Like I said, you won't need that much time, but you will have it allocated for you. You can take the exam as many times as you want. You can take the exam whenever you want. I'd encourage you to take it now because you've already scheduled the time and you're kind of here already, but certainly life happens and if there's something more pressing you need to do, of course you can come in later and take it at any time you want. Let's see, this session has been recorded, so we'll send it out. I don't know, we'll send it, it might not come out tomorrow, but you should get this session soon. We have 2 more sessions coming up. So once again, we're going to be doing search mastery tomorrow at the same time we start today, and then administration the day after. And, happy to see you guys there. But other than that, I think we're pretty good. So James, kind of keep me honest. Anything I missed, or if you want to tag on there? Sorry to throw you on the spot, but
No, that's fine because there've been a lot coming in through chat that aren't in the Q&A. So I think we've covered everything. If we haven't, guys, please pop it into the Q&A so we can differentiate it and answer it for everyone. There is one there that I'm trying to answer right now. I don't know if you want to have a look at it. Someone was looking for, how do you list all the source categories, even if the source category has 0 records imported?
oof.
Yeah, it seems so simple, doesn't
It
it?
does, and that's a good question.
And the question just came in on live mode. Do you want to explain that, or you want me to?
Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Yeah. So
Let me I'll kind of navigate to it because
yeah, cool.
if you don't
Yeah,
want.
so live mode simply starts polling. It'll take a while for it to turn on because it has to cache everything, and it's actually writing some things to some temporary memory so it can continue to utilize them through the course of the time period. And you can see a live mode, he just toggled it on, so it'll refresh these. So if you have one you've never used in live mode before, it might take a little while to load the whole page. But it's watching constantly and updating live as the data comes in. So it's creating some of those queries and scheduling them right away instead of just looking at blocks of time specifically, instead of updating when you just refresh. So it is a bit more intensive to do that, and it's not always helpful for what you're doing. So anything you'd add to that, Josh?
No, that was a better description than I probably would have given. So no, thank you for that. Yeah, and it's just the toggle. It's really kind of easy to turn on and off. Let me see. There was somebody wanting some navigation to the exam, so I'll put that slide up for a second.
Okay, cool. And then on the map question that just came in, no, there's not. We use a third-party provider for the map and the icons, and that provider does not have a drill down today in the old dashboards. I shouldn't say old dashboards, classic or legacy or whatever. Are they classic? Is that what we call them, Josh?
Yeah, it changes data. Yeah.
Yeah, the original dashboards don't have it. The new ones, I'm not aware of if there's a map there. Actually, I don't remember seeing one, but yeah, we don't have parity between the two, between the original and the new. So that's why both of them exist today. So we plan to keep that until we get parity. So they'll be there a while.
So the exam should be done not with your test account, be done with with your corporate account or personal or private account. And then the other slides I'll leave up here, probably not maybe most important to many of you, are those Uber Eats. So as a reminder, once you're done with the exam, just send a copy of the PDF of the document, the certification rather, excuse me, to training@sumologic.com, and we'll send you out that Uber Eats card.
So Roop just asked a question about having SSO enabled for corporate Sumo Logic, and it's getting them directed back to the home screen.
So that's going to be this issue. I'm going to put the link there, this one. Yeah. So if you go ahead and follow these steps of going to help and community and email, that should.
If that doesn't fix it for you, which sometimes that's the case, it doesn't, because we have some financial services companies that are extremely secure. And the solution they've used is they've created a new private account, right, with their personal email address, taken the exam that way, and then email training@sumologic.com to let them know that you'd like to have that credit transferred over from your personal email to your corporate email. So there is a sort of a workaround for that.
That's not first recommendation, but yeah, if the first two methods don't work, then that's absolutely fine.
Right. Yeah, Tom, that might be your solution. It doesn't look like that was working for Tom for the community verify account.
So. Yeah, and it looks like Van's having that same issue in the chat. So Kristen, if you can't sign into Sumo, that's going to be somebody in your office. If you're having a problem with just the exam, That's going to be kind of what James was just referring to,
Yeah,
of
Kristen.
creating a sign up,
Yeah.
creating creating an account through Sumo Logic sign up, taking the exam with that account, and then emailing us and say converting it to my company.com domain. And in fact, if you do that, I'd encourage, and you're going to attend tomorrow and the next day, I'd encourage you to send that email after you took those exams, just so easier for us to do it at one time. And so the question here about can you send logs from multiple locations into a single source category? Absolutely, and that's kind of the point of a source category, is
Yeah.
that exactly as described in the question. And so we'll look at that on Thursday, or the last day of togetherness, which I think is my Thursday afternoon. We'll go into how those
Oh,
source
good.
categories work.
Van got in using SSO, so cool.
Good. Yeah, and it's one of those things. It just might work on the fourth time. It's weird that way.
And Kristen, that's fine. You can do that. We can't at Sumo. We can't reset passwords for individual accounts within, with your account within Sumo, unless you're the owner of the account. So, for example, if you have your personal one and you've forgotten your email address or forgotten your password for your email address, then we can reset that. But we can't reset yours in a corporate account. You would need to contact your account administrator.
The exams are free for you to take indefinitely. Like I said, currently encourage you to take them now live, but you can take them anytime, and they will be free for pretty much indefinitely.
Yeah, Kristen, that's correct. Once you get your corporate email account reset, you can simply email training@sumologic.com and give them your personal one with a certificate and the your corporate email, and ask them to move it over. So they should be able to do that. So Roop, you should see help over in the lower left-hand corner. You might have to scroll down if it's off your screen for finding help. So it should be just above your name or your login ID. Yeah, Josh is showing it right now.